Shalom. First and foremost, before I begin this lesson, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Racha HaKodash. The honors go out to the apostles, Elsgrave Millstone, who rule and teach well. Shalom, Wa Barakiam to you, brothers and sisters out there. All right, this is Brother Malachi from the Great Millstone Nashville Camp. And Lord, when that this lesson is edifying to the hopeful elect. All right, I just wanted to get some scriptures showing that the so-called white man, the so-called Caucasian race, collectively, are known as the Edomites in the Bible. All right, because the Edomites are not done away with. Let's go ahead and prove that real quick. They're one simple scripture. Second Ezra chapter 6 verse 9, it says, "For Esau is the end of the world." Well, I'll start at verse 7. It says, "Then answered I and said, What shall be the parting asunder of the times? Or when shall be the end of the first and the beginning of it that followeth? And he said unto me, From Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth." So, how could the Edomites be done away with if Esau is the end of the world, the end of the age, right? So, Esau is going to rule and have the dominion, and then the Lord is going to return. Yahweh Shai is going to return, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. And that's the beginning of Jacob being established. Sirach 10 and 4, and then you can also read verse 8. So the Edomites can't be done away with because we are not in the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven comes right after Esau's rulership. This is the end of the statute. So no, they're not done away with. All right, that's just one way to get it. There's other ways, but that's the way that I chose to go. So now, let's go ahead and get this. Genesis chapter 25. And verse 21. "And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. And the children struggled together within her, and she said, If it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger." Right? So far what we have here is Rebekah's going to give birth to twins. All right? And it just said 2 nations are in thy womb. So even though both of these children came from Isaac's seed, right, the Lord is distinguishing here that these are going to be 2 separate nations. They're both going to be a patriarch. Okay? And it says 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. So even though they're twins, they're nothing alike. Right? Which we especially see that now, today, the Israelites and the Edomites all throughout history, they're basically polar opposites. When we look at the laws, when we look at how the Lord tells us to conduct ourselves, he's basically telling us don't act like an Edomite. Don't do what an Edomite would do. Yahweh Shai was the opposite of an Edomite. Okay? Verse 24, "And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb." So really that wasn't known up until that point. Well, I guess it kind of was, because I guess it kind of was, because the Lord said 2 nations. Regardless, so there were twins in her womb. "And the first came out red all over like an hairy garment." So he didn't come out of the womb hairy. All right, it's just saying he's red like a hairy garment. Now, don't get it twisted. Esau is hairy. Not just because somebody's hairy doesn't mean they're an Edomite. Okay, and then, of course, men have hair. Right, but, Edomites can be especially hairy at times, like a damn Sasquatch almost. And what proves that Esau's hairy is not Genesis 25 and 25, but when you go to Genesis 27 chapter, where Jacob had supplanted Isaac into the blessing, and he had the animal hair, I believe, what was it, goat hair? He had the hair on his arm, placed on his arms to make him seem like Esau, because Jacob was more so smooth, so he wasn't super hairy, Okay, so verse 25, and it says in the first, so the first is what? The elder as well, too, right? And up there it said the elder shall serve the younger. It's a very crucial thing right there. All right, it says, and the first came out red all over like an hairy garment, and they called his name Esau, which when you go into the word Esau, right, now, this is a disclaimer, it was changed. So when you go into it on the blue letter, it's not going to say it anymore. All right, they changed it. Esau be tampering with things. Okay, but what it used to say was Ishashua, which basically translates to wasted away is he, which is referring to his pigmentation. Right, he doesn't have pigmentation. And, if you can receive it, Esau is Cain in the reincarnation. When he was Cain, he was a so-called black man, a so-called Negro man, and then he was cursed. The mark of Cain was leprosy. All right, and Esau, in this carnation, if you will, in this body, he came out of the womb with that leprosy. So it carried into his, from Cain to Esau, which is, heavy in itself. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel. And that's the spirit, because that's what we started with, basically. 2nd Ezra 6, And his name was called Jacob, and Isaac was 80 years old when she bare him. And that's an important thing to point out as well, because you notice that's how the verse ends. It ends like that. This is what Esau looks like, and then, after Esau came Jacob, and there you go, boom. No, well, why didn't it describe what Jacob looked like? Because Jacob didn't look out of the ordinary. I mean, there was nothing really important or special to document, because he looked like a so-called black baby, if you will. Which all nations other than the Edomites had pigment, had melanin. And that's, majority of the earth. So that's just common. The way Jacob came out, it's like, okay, that, that's a baby. Like, that's how babies are supposed to look. Esau is the one where it's like, what the hell? Like what's wrong with this, baby, but they knew it was leprosy. Right, which he's a clean leper, by the way, because, it doesn't spread from him to other people. So really, we already went over the appearance, which, another disclaimer, just because somebody is so-called white doesn't make them an Edomite, all right? Because the term ite means a descendant of. So you can be so-called white and not descend from Esau through your father's lineage, which is how your race is determined. Numbers 1:18. All right, there's a million scriptures on that. The seed line determines your race, your patrilineal, not your appearance. Okay? And just like you can be a so-called black person and you can still be an Edomite. You can still descend from Edom. You see, it's not about appearance. And then you have Israelites that have leprosy. Having leprosy doesn't make you an Edomite. All right? It's just a judgment. It's a curse. Verse 27, so we went into the appearance. Now we're going to go into, a characteristic here. Verse 27, it says, and the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man dwelling in tents. All right, so when you look at it, Esau was a cunning hunter. Who are the main people that be hunting? Who are the main people that every time you look up hunting or, even fishing, if you will. Well, I'll say hunting. More so, but you look up these things, or the big catch, big fish catch, or who's standing there with the dead deer in his arms getting his picture taken. Who's the man that just loves hunting, and a lot of them don't even hunt for food, they just hunt to hunt. which is not what it's not meant to be a sport. All right, it's meant to get food. Okay? That's what hunting is for. To get food. All right, you're not supposed to just go out there and shoot a deer and then just leave it in the forest. That doesn't make any sense. The whole point is for food, to feed your family, to feed your village or whatever, as part of your job, But Esau make a sport out of it. He'll shoot animals and eat them, and they're not lawful, which he's not under the law. All right, he's a beast himself. But he just loves to destroy and kill things. Is the point that I'm trying to make here. All right. And actually, since I was talking about leprosy, I had some pictures of this because this is one example of leprosy here is vitiligo. All right, you also have albinism. But yeah, this, just an example if you want to look, basically, because you see, look, dark skin, but then look where the leprosy is. If the whole body looked like that, it would look like a so-called white person, straight up, right? There you go. That's leprosy. That's what Esau had. Esau was basically albino. Let me show that as well. Yeah. So for you black on the Israelites, is this a Edomite? They'd say, no, ain't no Edomite. Because look at their parents. Exactly. Because that's all that matters is your father, right? It's not about your appearance. Because Israelites have leprosy as well now. But this, albinism, vitiligo, that was mainly associated with the Edomites. Right? Coming out red. They're the red people, the red nation. Right? They were the Greeks, they were the Romans, the Spanish, the French, the British. All these. All right, they got the tiny tops. They got the Germans, and by Germans I mean the Temanites, not the Jake Germans. Right, but the Edomites, Esau was a so-called white man. I really, that was already, trying to think if there's something else I want to get, but that kind of, sealed the deal right there. So I can show some more scriptures showing that, leprosy, or pale skin rather is a curse. But that's really a different lesson because I just want to bring out a quick pointer to show that Esau Edom is the so-called white man. And also, let me say this as well. Well, first, let me grab this. Hold on. Cover and cast. Isaiah 25:7. And he will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people in the veil that is spread over all nations. So people are starting to understand who they are and where they actually come from. One of the 18 nations. Right? These myths and these false names and all that have been thrown on these different races of people, groups of people. It's all being, torn down because it's caused nothing but confusion. All right? Starting with the apostle and elders of Great Millstone on down, we're telling you, who the Edomites are, who the Israelites are, the other nations, the sons of men, sons of the wicked, and the sons of God. The three classifications of men. You see? We're destroying that, that stronghold, the deceits and lies. The so-called white race collectively is Esau Edom, the nation of Edom. The so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians are the Israelites according to the Bible, collectively. Okay? Now there's exceptions to it. But, for the majority, for the most part. And, Salaki, I remember what I was going to say too, because people try to say, the so-called white people are Japheth because they're European. No, what you don't understand is they conquered and took over Europe from the Japhetic people, which the Japhetic people today are people like Samoans and Polynesians and Hawaiians and the Aboriginals of Australia. All right, those are Japheth. Okay? Those are Japhites. I believe the Aboriginals of Australia were Japhetic as well. You can correct me on that, but I believe that's what I heard. But especially, Pacific Islanders, basically. the Etruscans. What was the other one? Oh, was it Cretes or maybe that was something different? Yeah, they were pushed out of Europe. So just because somebody dwells in that land now, oh, well, they got to be Japheth because they're dwelling in the land of Europe. No, because that doesn't mean they were always the people there. Okay, don't you understand migration? That's why DNA tests, well, there's a billion reasons why DNA tests are BS, all right, but that's one of them, migration. Because they tell you come from this landmass or that landmass, but people have been migrating for thousands upon thousands of years just because there's a majority of a certain people in a land right now. Like look at Egypt. Most of the people in Egypt, majority, like way, not probably 95% of the people there aren't the original Egyptians. They're not the Sudanese. They're not the Hamites. A lot of them are Ishmael. So what about that? It's not about landmass. Okay, so they're not Japheth just because they're known as Europeans right now. No, bro. They're Edomites that conquered and took over Europe. Okay? So come on, bro. But Lord, when this lesson was edifying, before I close, I want to give all praise to Yahweh Bashim Al Shai, Bashim Rakha Kodash, the honors the Apostle Elsgray Millstone. Shalom.